Hi, everyone. I think we're going to get started at this time. Javier, am I good? Awesome. Hello, and thank you for being here today. We hope you're all healthy and safe during these times. Joining us virtually on the UT Austin side, we have students and faculty out of College of Natural Sciences, Education, Cockrell School of Engineering, Liberal Arts, Pharmacy, and McCombs. A few friends zooming in from Texas State, University of Denver, University of North Texas, and a special hello to our friends over at A&M, Hookem. We want to start off with a few housekeeping roles. This is a live event. We'll be taking live Q&A throughout the conversation in the chat box. All attendees are muted and video off before then. The chat is open, so please be respectful in this space and please post your questions throughout. We will call on you and can dive in deeper on specific topics. So let's get to it. Welcome, my name is Ashley Jennings and I serve as the Managing Director of the Texas Innovation Center. We are the official new venture and technology commercialization arm and leg of the University of Texas. We'd love to hear from you, so please connect with us at innovation@utexas.edu. And with us today, we are so thankful to have our partner, Mr. Jim Greenwood. Jim and his wife, Gail, have been involved in the SBIR program since its inception in the 80s. The Greenwoods have taught SBIR STTR workshops in 48 states, plus Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C., offering training through local and regional economic development groups, universities, federal labs, SBDCs, PTACs, and MEPs. They've also taught in many of the national SBIR conferences over the past 18 years, including the most recent national conferences in Boston, DC, and Tampa. So we're just so excited to have Jim here today, and I'm going to kick it over to him because I know we have a lot to cover to get started. Jim, take it away.
Oops, tells me I'm muted. I'm unmuted now. Okay, welcome everyone, and appreciate the opportunity to present to you today. Wow, I've been involved in this since the 80s. That means like I've been involved in this longer than some of you have probably been alive at this point. So this is going to be interesting. That makes me feel old. So. All right, so we're going to move over to, let's see, other sharing. Do you want to continue? Yes, I do. Let me make sure I got the right screen. I'll show you my shopping list. All right, hopefully that's showing the intro slide. I believe I actually sent to all of you in the slides via PowerPoint, I'm sorry, via PDF recently. So you have those if you wish to follow along. They should be fairly current. I've made a couple of minor changes since sending those to her the other day, but they should be pretty current. And again, my appreciation to the Texas Innovation Center and UT Austin for sponsorship today. So our goal is to talk generally about SBIR, STTR, and then about phase 1 proposal preparation. Now, we ordinarily do a full day webinar on this subject. Or workshop in the good old days. We're cramming all that into 2 hours. So I'm just going to talk really fast. Now, it will be cutting out a lot of material, so it is an abbreviated version of the full day workshop. Just want you to realize that there may be things that you would want to cover that we just won't have time for given the 2 hour limitation. Speaking of 2 hours, I'm not going to just sit here and talk for 2 hours. We're going to take a break about halfway into the event. Take a 10-minute break so that you can get up, stretch your legs, beat your head against the wall, whatever you may feel is appropriate at that point to get the cobwebs out and get started for the second half. I also want to mention, and Ashley said we got the chat function available to you. Because it is an abbreviated webinar, I always go through a set of annotated instructions for one of the agencies. Well, in this case, I'm not sure which agency we want to go through. You have a choice. Would you like me to go through the instructions for the Department of Defense, the National Institutes of Health, National Science Foundation, or Department of Energy? So if you have a preference for one of those, you want to be able to express your preference on that. Now it looks like we got a poll going here. All right, so we're doing a poll rather than chat function, I guess, on this. So, all right, so if you have a preference, express for one of those. If you want one of the other agencies, I'm sorry, those are the only 4 that I provided slides for. Now, the good news is, even if you were to, if your preferred agency is not selected, the materials are still in the package that Ashley sent you yesterday, the PDF. In other words, there are annotated or comment-filled sets of instructions for all 4 of those agencies that you're welcome to take a look at. So we'll keep the poll open through our 10-minute break at halftime, and they'll give you a chance to express your preference, and based on which agency gets the most votes, we'll go through those instructions. Okay. All right, so let's move into our definition of SBIR. What the heck is this SBIR thing that we're dealing with here? And let's see, I've still got the poll up on, is everyone got poll up on their screen? Can we pull that down, or am I supposed to do that? Am I supposed to do that? Okay. All right, I'll pull that down. All right. This, in a nutshell, is the SBIR program. Small Business Innovation Research Program, SBIR, provides over $3 billion a year non-recourse contracts and grants to small U.S.-owned companies to develop products, services based on innovative, unproven concepts and technologies. A very dense definition, so let's pick it apart bullet by bullet. First of all, it's over $3 billion a year. Don't know what the new FY 21, fiscal year 21 budgets are going to be, but I have no indication they're going down by any means, so I think it will be even higher than the $3 billion we were already seeing. Non-recourse contracts and grants. Non-recourse simply means these are funds that you do not repay, and they are funds that do not require you giving up any equity in the company. So 2 reasons you ought to like SBIR: you don't have to repay it, you don't give up equity. Some of the awards are made as contracts, some as grants. So I hear a lot of people describe the SBIR grant program. Well, they're actually less than half right, because the majority of awards in SBIR are actually contracts. You go, I don't really care as long as I get money. Well, there's actually a difference between contracts and grants, and we'll cover that. To small U.S.-owned companies, this is money coming from U.S. taxpayers through the federal government. To small companies, you have to be a small U.S.-owned company. So U.S.-owned simply means 51% or more owned by U.S. citizens or permanent resident aliens. So it's a simple majority ownership. Small, real simple definition, guys: 500 or fewer employees. So if your company, U.S.-owned, has 500 or fewer employees, you're eligible for SBIR. To develop new products and services, you go, wait a minute, I don't know everything about SBIR, but I do know it's about R&D. It's not products and services. Well, you're confusing the SBIR means and the ends. The means would be R&D, but the end point of a desirable and successful SBIR project is one that results in products and services being created. They might be new products and services. They might be improvements to existing products and services. Although I will tell you, there are some agencies, notably National Science Foundation, that doesn't want to see just improvements to existing products and services out there. They want to see whole new ones. But other agencies are more willing to accept projects that would result in an improvement to an existing product or service. So that is the desired outcome of the SBIR program. We'll talk more about that. Now, the last bullet reminds us that you do have to do R&D to get to those new products and services. So they want you doing work on innovative, unproven concepts and technologies. 2 keywords there. One is innovative, right? It's right there in the name of the program, Small Business Innovation Research Program. You got to do stuff that's innovative. Well, what the heck is innovative? Oh, come on, guys. You really want a common definition of innovative across 11 different federal agencies? Not going to happen. But it is very important to some of the agencies like NSF, National Institutes of Health. Their review panels will spend a lot of time discussing, is this really innovative or not? And if they don't feel it's innovative, then they don't feel that they should be spending small business innovation research program dollars on it. So realize when they ask you what's innovative about your project, that you spend ample time and be convincing in your arguments as to why it's innovative. Other key word in that last bullet is unproven. Now, here's where I see people trip up in SBIR all the time. They come in with a proposal that says, we can do it. We know how to do this. This is straightforward. This is simple. There's no big deal. We've done it before. And you've basically said everything wrong to the reviewers, because the purpose of SBIR is to fund the things you don't know whether you can do it. You don't know whether it's going to work. You don't know whether it's going to solve the problem. You don't know whether it's going to solve it better than competing solutions. So you need to propose a project that you do not know is going to be successful. Now, is that weird or what? But that is the kind of proposal they want to fund. In fact, that's the whole justification for SBIR existing in the first place. The theory is, and keyword there, theory, is that if you know it's going to work and it's so straightforward, well, you can get money to fund that anywhere. I said theory, guys. You can get money for that anywhere. But if it's unproven, it's uncertain, it's technically risky, wow, that's hard to get folks to put up money to fund those sorts of projects. So there, the federal government has to step in through SBIR and fund those kinds of projects. So make sure you're proposing something that is unproven, technically risky, and again, innovative. Yeah, there we go. So if that's SBIR, what the heck is this STTR thing? Well, SBIR, I mean, there are a lot of different differences. We could spend all 2 hours talking about it, but the key one, in my opinion, is SBIR says, you know, if you'd like to subcontract some of that contractor grant to another entity, you can do that. And that entity could include a nonprofit like a university or federal laboratory. That's SBIR says it's okay to do that. STTR, which stands for Small Business Technology Transfer Program, doesn't say it's okay to do that in terms of subcontracting to a nonprofit. It says you must subcontract at least 30% of the project to a nonprofit like a university or federal laboratory. So the important point here is you can actually have an SBIR project that involves a university as well as an STTR project that involves a university. I've had people tell me before that, well, you know, we're involving University of Texas, so we have to go STTR. No, dead wrong, dead wrong. Involving a university actually opens the door to either SBIR or STTR. So keep that in mind. It's perfectly legitimate to use a nonprofit on an SBIR as well as it is on an STTR. Note down there, there are 11 agencies with SBIR program, but only 5 of them have STTR. And I'll show you a slide here shortly that differentiates which ones are STTR agencies and which ones are just SBIR agencies. Eligibility, again, we can subcontract up to 1/3 of our phase 1. Now, we haven't talked about phases yet. We'll cover that in a moment, but basically in your initial contractor grant, figure you could subcontract about 1/3 of your SBIR project out to another entity. And frankly, it can be, we said universities, can be federal laboratories, but it can also be virtually anything else you can imagine. A for-profit organization, the largest Fortune 100 company that you can imagine, or an individual down the street that's perhaps a retired faculty member who wants to consult on your project. Now, the entity or individual can be foreign. Turns out there's not a restriction on that. It can be foreign as long as the research is done in the United States. So I had a project where University of Toronto, Canada, was going to be the subcontractor. That was allowed, provided University of Toronto understood that it had to come across the US border to do its research. It's part of the project, if you will. Now, some agencies make some limited exceptions to that issue of all work must be done in the US, but I think it's best to keep in mind that that's the expectation, is you will do the work in the United States. In contrast, as STTR, you have to sub a minimum of 30% to a nonprofit like a university or federal lab, and you can actually sub up to 60%. So STTR gives us the opportunity to sub a lot more than we can sub in an SBIR. I mentioned the largest company you can imagine is interested. This is an example. Here's Lockheed Martin. You might have heard of this little prime contractor for the Department of Defense, and they're basically saying, hey, we're interested in in some of the SBIR topics that the Department of Defense has released recently. And if you're interested in having us, Lockheed Martin, become part of your team, then this is how to contact us. All right, so what are these phases? Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Well, SBIR and STTR are broken.
Sorry to interrupt you. Quick question.
Sure.
Can you subcontract a for-profit company, or does it have to be nonprofit? And I know you had that on your slide, but if you could just iterate further.
Okay. If it's SBIR, it's fine to subcontract to a for-profit. An STTR, we could actually subcontract a small portion of the work to a for-profit, but we have to, again, on STTR, we have to subcontract at least 30% to a nonprofit. So let me quickly do an example on the STTR. Small company has to do at least 40%. So set aside 40% for our small company. 30% has to be done by the university or federal lab. That's our nonprofit partner that's required on an STTR. So now we got 30 plus the small company's 40, we're up to 70%. You got 30% of the project left over. That 30% could now be given to a third party, and that third party could be another university, could be another federal lab or other nonprofit, or it could be a for-profit, small or large business. So there's quite a bit of leeway in both programs for subcontracting, and the big thing to remember is just if it's STTR, you're going to have to subcontract a minimum of 30% to a university or federal lab. Okay, good question. All right, so our 3 phases, the program is basically in both SBIR and STTR broken into 3 phases, primarily to make it kind of easy for the politicians to understand what you're doing here. Phase 1 is, remember you got that unproven idea, that really technically risky innovation of yours. Phase 1 is to prove it works. Prove that you can overcome the technical risks and get it to perform to solve the problem or meet the need. That is the purpose of phase 1, is to remove the question of feasibility, is the buzzword here, guys, is feasibility. Prove the feasibility, technical feasibility of your idea. For that, depending on the agency, you can get anywhere from about $25,000 to up to $250,000. Now, there's some exceptions even on the upper end of that. Some of you may have experience with NIH, National Institutes of Health phase 1s that are even bigger than $257,000. But again, think of it as a relatively modest amount of money for a relatively modest period of time, less than a year typically, to prove your idea works. Very common for people to over-propose this phase 1. They try to do too much with the amount of time, the amount of money that they've got. So keep focused. You know, what is the key question that we need to resolve to answer the question? Is it feasible? Is it technically feasible? Does it work? And that's what you address in phase 1. Now, some of you in phase 1 will prove it doesn't work. You had a great idea. It had merit. It didn't work. That's not a failure in SBIR, STTR. That's what the program is for, is to kind of isolate those good ideas that work from those what look to be good ideas that don't work. So it's not a failure to have that happen. Now, it is a limitation, because that means you cannot continue into phase 2 when you prove that your idea didn't work or is infeasible in phase 1. So that may happen to you. I hope it doesn't, because again, you can't go on to phase 2 and you're kind of done with the project. So let's say your idea does prove feasible in phase 1. You prove it works. You can then apply for and hopefully receive a phase 2, which is, you'll hear it described as the main R&D activity or the principal R&D activity. You'll also hear it described as the prototyping phase, but I don't want you to feel that you can only prototype in phase 2. There are many projects where there is some sort of crude prototype done in phase 1, for example. And there are some projects where there's no need to create a prototype at all. So don't feel hindered that you have to do a prototype in phase 2. Money-wise, a lot more money. Time-wise, a lot more time. We're looking at up to 1.7 million for a couple of years of time. So phase 1, think of it as a few people on your team working part-time for a few months to prove it works. Phase 2 then is get a team of individuals together, maybe working virtually full-time on this project and working on it for a couple of years to really work all the kinks out of it. Phase 3 then is that commercialization phase. That's where we take it to the marketplace. That's where we turn it into a product or service and start selling the results to someone. No SBIR or STTR funding available for this phase. All of SBIR STTR funding goes into phase 1 and phase 2. So how do you fund phase 3? Well, that's where you're gonna be talking to Ashley and other resources about, you know, where do I find the venture capitalists? Where do I find the angel investors? Where do I find the money that gets me from kind of perfecting my technology to now getting it into the marketplace? It may include some federal funding. It just wouldn't be SBIR funding. So you will hear of some projects that went into phase 3 and, for example, still had military Department of Defense money. That happens. But trust me, that phase 3 money is not SBIR money, it's other defense money. All right, so those are our 3 phases. I mentioned we got contracts and grants. Contract agency is much like the military. The military doesn't come to you and say, gee, do you guys have any ideas of something really fun and interesting that we could do in the military? No, they come to you and say, we have a mission. The mission is national defense. Here is the problem we're having accomplishing the national defense. Can you solve that problem? Yes, good, send us a proposal. No, go away. We ask you to solve our problem. The quote there from Susan is I think, a good summary here. Focus on what we ask for, not what you think we need. So we, the military, will tell you what the problem is that we, the military, want solved. You, small company, propose an innovative solution to our problem. Okay, so it's all about solving problems of the agency. So that's contract. What's a grant agency? Well, that's where they say, you know, gee, do you have any ideas, any good ideas that you'd like us to fund? At National Institutes of Health, it'll be good ideas related to human health. At Department of Agriculture, it'll be good ideas related to farming, ranching, and living in small towns in rural America. At National Science Foundation, it will be basically any topic you can think of. NSF's very proud. They will accept ideas on, proposals on virtually any topic. So it's up to you. Do you like contract agency? You like grant agency? Some people like contract agencies because it's very specific. You know what the problem is. You know what you're trying to solve. And by the way, that usually includes a built-in customer for phase 3, which is a nice feature of a contract. The grant agencies are favored a lot of times by folks with academic backgrounds because they're used to that freedom, if you will, to come up with new and interesting ideas that they want to propose. Now, I'll show you in a moment here, in fact, right here, what is a contract agency versus what is a grant agency. Now, what's showing up here in blue is a contract agency, and what shows up in green is a grant agency. You got a pie chart on the left, which kind of graphically shows you the relative size of the agencies, and then the chart on the right gives you kind of detailed numbers, and also details out the smaller agencies that appear on the bottom half of that chart. All right, so just looking at the pie chart, you now know who the 800-pound gorilla is in the SBIR STTR program. It is the military. The military all by itself is just shy of 50% of the entire SBIR program, STTR program. So it is huge by SBIR standards, about 1.75 billion in these data from FY 2018. So unless you just don't want to deal with the military, you don't like the military, or you were enlisted for a while and just have had all the fun you can have with the military, I wouldn't rule them out for your project because they are so large with so many topics. They might just have one that fits what you're doing. So keep that in mind. So DOD is your 800-pound gorilla. Your 600-pound gorilla would be the Department of Health and Human Services. or as most commonly referred to in this program, NIH, National Institutes of Health. So they're, again, we're talking billions of dollars. So they're still a large component of the SBIR STTR program. They're followed by Department of Energy, National Science Foundation, and NASA as the big five. Now, the big five mean that collectively they've got about 95% of the SBIR money, and collectively the big five have 100% of the STTR funding. Put another way, the small agencies like Department of Agriculture, Homeland Security, Transportation don't have STTR programs. Turns out the legislation did not require that the smaller agencies have STTR programs, so only the big five do. And again, this slide helps you see which are our contract versus grant, as well as the magnitude, as well as the definition or identification of what the 11 agencies are having SBIR programs. That would be all 11 agencies shown on the right side of this slide. And the 5 agencies that have STTR programs are the big 5, which are listed at the top of the chart on the right side. Oh, there we go. Once again, let us know what you're thinking about your preference. If you see one of these agencies, you go, hey, I really want to know which, what a proposal looks like, what I've got to do to put in a proposal. We'll cover after break either DOD, NIH, Energy, or NSF. Just make sure you give us your vote before lunch. This simply tells you when agencies are requesting proposals. It's all over the calendar, basically. Release date indicates the date when you have the request for proposals, or as used the terminology in this program, the solicitation. And then the closing date is when your proposal is due. Notice some agencies like USDA, first row up there, 1 solicitation per year, comes out in August, proposals due in October. So if you want to submit for USDA, you got 1 opportunity this year. If you miss it, you'll be waiting until next year. Other agencies, Department of Defense, the third agency down, 3 solicitations per year with 3 different due dates. And per our text box up there, they are now putting out what they're calling out-of-cycle solicitations that are supplementing the 3 that you see here. So for the 3 solicitations shown here, there's probably going to be, and I'm just guessing this, guys, I'm going to guess there'll be 10 different out-of-cycle solicitations in the same fiscal year. So it's less and less possible to just monitor the 3 DoD solicitations. If you're interested in DoD, you have to be looking out for these out-of-cycle solicitations as well. Department of Energy, 2 solicitations per year. 1 is currently active. Go down to Department of Health and Human Services, NIH, Center for Disease Control, FDA. They put out 1 solicitation per year. This year it came out in July. Usually comes out in May, but this year it came out in July, and has the 3 due dates shown there, September, January, and April. And finally, at the bottom of the page, NSF has 4, and they don't call them deadlines or solicitations. Basically, they're saying you can submit your proposal within each or any one of those 4 cycles is what they call them. So we had a cycle that ended on March 5th, another one on June 4th, last one on September 3rd. So the current cycle is the 4th one. We're in the September 4th to December 3rd cycle at NSF. Similarly, these are the dates for STTR. And again, I won't go through in detail, but again, the same agencies that have multiple solicitations in SBIR also have multiple solicitations in STTR. Just to give you an idea of success rates, and this is just 1 year in 1 agency. So don't take this as what's going to happen every year in every agency, but the 2 sets of bars in the middle of the slides where we want to concentrate, phase 1 and phase 2. So phase 1, roughly 1 in 5 phase 1s being awarded. So it is a competitive program. This is not a send in a proposal and just wait for the check to show up. It is send in the proposal, cross your fingers, get the rosary beads out, do whatever you do to get, you know, things working in your favor and hope you're the one in five. Phase two then jumps tremendously up to like a 4 out of, or a 2 out of 5 average, or a 1 out of 3, I guess, on STTR that year. The point is, it's a much higher probability of success in a phase two than it is in a phase one. So you got to work hard, you got to be diligent, you got to persevere to get a phase one, and you may have to go through a couple, 3 rejections before you get your first phase one. But once you get it, get your foot in the door and start working real hard on getting a conversion of that phase one into a phase two, where you get a lot more money, a lot more time, and take the project a very important step towards the goal of commercialization. All right, so that in a nutshell, and I know it's like drinking from a fire hose, but that in a nutshell is SBIR, STTR. Specific questions, again, pop them into the chat function, and Ashley will bring them up for us. But as you're doing that, I want to go ahead and jump into a start of our 7-step process for submitting a phase one proposal, either SBIR or STTR proposal, to any of the agencies that we're talking about. And the first step is to find a relevant topic. You do not have the freedom of submitting an unsolicited proposal. In other words, you can't just write up an idea as a white paper and shoot it to one of these agencies and expect them to fund you in SBI or STTR. Instead, they will solicit proposals. They will send out a solicitation, and it will tell you what topics they're interested in, even if they're very broad, like NIH, life sciences, and human health. It'll be very broad topics, but it will tell you what the topics are. It will tell you when the deadline is, and it will tell you the format and content that must be included in the proposal. So these are not unsolicited proposal opportunities. They are solicited. So what you want to find is the solicitation for your agency. Now, solicitation is just an SBI or STTR term for request for proposals. You may hear other terms used, Department of Energy, NIH, like FOA, Funding Opportunity Announcement. DOD is into sheep, so they have the BA, no, it's the Broad Agency Announcement, and now they have the, what is it now, the CSO, the Commercial, I'm trying to remember what it is now. It's commercial something offering, commercial success offering. Anyway, they've got CSO now. And USDA has a RFA, request for applications. My personal favorite, not shown on this slide, is NOAA, National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, has a NOFO. I love that. Sounds cool. Did you see the NOFO? Yeah, we have a really good NOFO this year. NOFO is Notice of Funding Opportunity, which again is just a solicitation. Now, rather than try to keep track of all this terminology, just remember the word solicitation. If you will use that word with any of the agencies, they'll understand what you're talking about. But if you call it an RFP, or request for proposals, they will whack you upside the head. So where do you find these solicitations? Well, believe it or not, in the olden days, they actually printed these things and mailed them to you. It was amazing. You'd actually know that USDA had released a solicitation because it showed up in your mailbox. Now it's paperless government, right? Yeah, right. Well, for purposes of SBI or STTR solicitations, it's paperless in that they now post their solicitations on their websites, and it's up to you to find them. And if you want to print them out or otherwise save them for your future reference. How do you find them? Where do you find them? The 2 places I would recommend, you can go to our website on the SBIR page, scroll to the bottom, and we're linked to all 11 agencies down there. So you can get to their websites there. Or you can go to the official SBIR government website, which is sbir.gov, and look for it. I tried to find it the other day. I was trying to show this to somebody that they can get to the solicitations from the sbir.gov website, and we were having trouble finding it. So they've apparently reorganized the site, and it's hidden somewhere. So again, I'm not trying to sell you on going to our website, but it's one place I know you can go to and link to the solicitations. Let me put it this way. You can link to the 11 agencies' SBIR websites. You will then, once you get to that website, have to hunt around for the solicitation. There's virtually no agency that just has a little blinking tab that says click here for solicitation. You have to hunt around to find them. Not user friendly, but that's the way it is. We can search, rather than just dredge through these solicitations page by page. We can search using search engines. The reason why you need to do that is exemplified in this meatball chart. Those are not red dots, those are meatballs with marinara sauce on them. And what we're showing here are a bunch of technical fields across the top, and down the side, your 11 agencies. And everywhere you see a meatball says that agency has had topics in that technical area in the recent past. So we're talking about life sciences. Let's look at that last column over there, life sciences. When people say life sciences, what automatically jumps to mind is National Institutes of Health. So scroll down there, sure enough, fourth row over is NIH, and sure enough, there's a meatball. So yes, NIH has life science topics, congratulations. Yeah, but look at everything else in that column. Every agency, all 11 SBIR agencies, all 5 STTR agencies have life science topics. So let me spin that a little differently. If you are interested in life science and you're only looking at NIH, you could be missing out on opportunities at 10 other agencies. So I would not be too close-minded on this, guys. You might be surprised where you find topics. It always baffles me when I see a particular topic and I kind of look at it, try to define what it is, and I kind of play in my mind, where do you think that is? And then I'll kind of guess what agency, and then I look, I'm right maybe 60% of the time. And the other time I look at it and go, dang, I wouldn't have expected that. So do the keyword searching to find opportunities that you might not otherwise see. So the first search engine is found on this official government website, SBIR.gov. And here under the funding tab, you pull it down and it basically says, okay, topics, open, future, closed, what do you want to search on? So we want to search on open topic. We click on open. And basically says in the little box up there, what do you want to search for? So we type in our keyword or words. In my case, I just wanted to know nuclear. Who's got nuclear topics out there? And I hit search, and what I get is 4 hits. Wow, that's not a lot, but I guess it's something. I was kind of surprised, I have to tell you, because I knew that the military, DOD, had a big solicitation out at that time on the street requesting proposals, and I was surprised that there'd only be 4 that have nuclear in their descriptions. And as you start looking at the actual topic descriptions, gee, this is Department of Health and Human Services down here. And what does this mean over here where it says the agencies, Department of Defense, there are 0 nuclear topics in the Department of Defense? How is that possible? Well, you found a problem with the SBIR.gov search engine. And the problem is it doesn't always have all of the topics loaded into it. So there I was searching for a word nuclear that you would expect to find in some DoD topics. DoD, the largest by far, remember they're the 800-pound gorilla, by far the largest agency in SBIR STTR, and none of their topics were loaded into this official government SBIR.gov website. How can that be? Well, it's a long story. I won't bore you with the details. It's just, that's the way it exists. This SBIR.gov search engine is oftentimes limited because it does not search all of the agencies that have topics available at that time. So what are you going to do? Well, you can supplement that search engine, SBIR.gov, with other search engines. This would be the DoD search engine. found at this website. And basically, you're clicking on topic info up at the top up here, and clicking on topics and topic Q&A, or you can do it down on the side down here. Takes you to this screen and it says, okay, what do you want to search on? And are you searching on active or current solicitation, or are you looking at old ones? Those would be archived ones. So we're asking for active topics. We're putting in keyword missile, and we hit search, and we get 3 hits, and they're listed there at the bottom of the page, all 3 being at Army in that particular solicitation. If you want to do more filtering, you can. It's a little more generous, I guess, when you do that. It's not a large capability to customize these searches, but there is a little bit more if you want to look into that. And this, if you click on any one of these topics, any one of the 3 topics down there, you are taken to, let's see, this is the, okay. So we're taken to the topic description, and there we can see, and it's full glory. This is the full topic description. And here's what they expect you to do in phase 1. Here's what they expect you to do in phase 2. Here's what they think is the opportunity in phase 3. So remember, they're a contract agency, so they're pretty specific about what the problem is and what they expect you to do. And you can actually see there's an opportunity for people to ask questions, your fellow competitors to ask questions about this topic, and the DoD to respond to those questions. Always interesting to take a look at that and see if you can glean something of value from that Q&A. Hi, Ashley.
Hey, Jim, quick question. Can you apply for multiple SBIR, STTR, different projects to different agencies?
Okay. Short answer is yes, and there's several different flavors of that. One would be sending one proposal on one topic, say to the military, another proposal on another topic to NASA, and another proposal on a third topic to, let's say, NIH. You can do that, perfectly acceptable. You do have to disclose that you're doing that, though. Excuse me, if it's the same project or similar project, you need to disclose. If they're completely different, you don't have to disclose it. But if there's any similarity in those 3 proposals, then you need to disclose that, because the agencies are very paranoid that you're going to try to accept multiple awards and double dip. If you want to send the same proposal, and again, let's say we want to send the same proposal to NSF and NIH on a life science topic, again, that's allowed. We can do that. But now it's definitely necessary that we disclose that we're doing that. They will ask you, are you sending it somewhere else? NSF really goes overboard, in my opinion, and says, do you anticipate sending a similar related proposal somewhere else? Well, you know, who has a crystal ball that knows what all the topics are going to be in the future? So it's kind of hard to anticipate doing that. But the point is twofold. One is, yes, you can have multiple proposals active at one time, either on the same topic or on different topics. And the second point is, make sure that if there's any similarity to the proposals that are being sent to multiple agencies, make sure you disclose it, because they're very, and again, paranoid is not an overstatement of the agency's attitude on that. They're just very worried that you're going to submit the same proposal multiple places, get multiple awards, and double dip with the government. Okay. Good question. Here's the bottom of here's the same slide, and I'm just showing you some Q&A that's occurring at the bottom of the page. Now, I'm not a big fan of you using this Q&A function, because your question is then going to be seen by everybody, and everybody includes your competitor on this topic. So you're asking questions to help clarify your proposal, what you're going to put in your proposal, but that's also helping your competitor. So I always recommend you look and see what other people have asked, but I would be hesitant to ask myself questions in this Q&A function. You say, well, then how do you get more information about a project? You call them up and you talk to them. There is an allowance at the military a certain time period, first 30 days after they put out a solicitation, that you can call them up and talk to them. And of course, then you've got a more private conversation between you and the topic author. Another search engine is grants.gov. So many of you know grants.gov as a place to go for submitting your proposal, but you can also use it to do keyword searching on topics. So again, grants.gov is the website. Click on search grants. Takes you to a much more complicated screen than what we saw for the military. We can do a fairly basic search. I put in keywords. I wanted to know what's out there that was both SBIR and COVID. And we can then specify other characteristics if we want to. It then comes back and says, okay, you got 4 matches. Now, what you see in the table here is not exactly a lot of information. You just got an opportunity number and an opportunity title, which doesn't tell you a lot. So you're gonna have to click on the opportunity number to take you down to, this example of that would take you to another screen. You're going, well, great, now I'm down another screen. It still doesn't show me the solicitation. It's just telling me the background on this USDA solicitation. And finally, if you hit related documents, you go down another level to this screen, and now we can actually click on, and what we would click on is that second solicitation down there, the lower of the two. And when we do that, finally, you will be taken to the USDA current solicitation. So it was not easy. It was like, what, 4 levels we went through to get down there, but you know, you can get there eventually, but it's also an indication to you that grants.gov is not the most user-friendly or best organized website out there. All right, so I wish I could tell you there was a really great search engine out there and you just go there and you put in a few keywords and it works marvelously and it's terrific, but that's not the case. We have some mediocre search engines right now, none of which is perfect, none of which is all encompassing. So you may have to do several searches as we just showed, do one on SBIR.gov, one on the DoD website, and one on the grants.gov website. Once you find an opportunity, talk to the agency. We want to talk to the agency. You go, well, why would I want to talk to these people? Well, trust me, when you see the topic descriptions, you're going to want to talk to these people because they're not always very well written, or they're not complete, or they've been edited down to fit a 1-page limit when they were actually written to be 4 or 5 pages long. So it's a way to learn more about the topic by talking to the agency. It's also a way to get a feel for this agency and its reps. You get them, get on the phone, have a little conversation, you hang up the phone, and if your response is, what a bunch of buffoons, what a bunch of idiots, what a bunch of morons, how can my tax dollars be going to a bunch of people that have no idea what the heck they're doing? Well, isn't it good that you found that out before you sent them a proposal and then got an award and then have to work with them for the next 3+ years on a phase 1, phase 2? Now, on the other hand, you hang up the phone and you go, man, what a bunch of neat people. They got some great ideas and what a great energy coming out of that office. Well, now you've got another reason to write this proposal because you can see that this is someone you'd love to work with. It's also a way for the agency to kind of get a face with your proposal. If Ashley just sends in a proposal, they go, Ashley, does anybody know Ashley? I've never heard of Ashley. She's down there in Austin, but I don't know any Ashley in Austin. I wonder who Ashley is. I wonder what she's up to. I wonder if she knows what she's doing. Well, if Ashley had called in advance and had a conversation and it went pretty well, then when her proposal shows up, the agency says, oh, okay, here's Ashley's proposal. I remember talking with her. Nice lady, interesting ideas. She's got some great ideas. I'm anxious to see the proposal. See, that made a nice introduction before your proposal showed up. All right, well, if you don't buy any of the other reasons, how about you talk to them because they tell you to talk to them? So the military, during the pre-release period, proposing firms have an opportunity to contact the topic authors. Keyword opportunity. This is an opportunity. This gets you information. This helps you write a better proposal. It helps you get better known by the agency. Even NIH in their grant program wants you calling and talking to them, because even though they will accept a proposal on anything related to life sciences and human health, it doesn't mean they think every project related to life sciences and human health is a good idea. And it'd be nice to know if they have an affinity towards or against what you're proposing before you send them a proposal. And finally, NSF and Department of Energy tell you you must have contact with us before submitting your proposal. And I'll cover that next slide. So who you talk to, you really don't want to talk to the SBIR office at these agencies, because they're not behind the topics. It's their job to put out the solicitation, manage the proposal preparation process, maybe manage the evaluation process, but they don't develop the topics. You need to be talking to program directors, topic managers, and so on. When do you do this? Grant agencies, remember grant versus contract agencies. Grant agency, we can submit our proposal anytime. Excuse me, we can talk to the grant agency anytime. Contract agency, no, very limited on when you can talk to them. In fact, once the solicitation is released and is available, they can't talk to you. How's that for an oddball situation? So NASA is a great example of this. When NASA puts out their big solicitation each year, has all these topics in it, as soon as that solicitation is available on their website, they refuse to talk to you about any of those topics. It wouldn't be fair for them to talk to you, is their attitude. You saying, but the military is a contract agency, and you've told us to talk to the military. Yeah, talk to them during what's called the pre-release period. See, when the solicitation comes out at the military, and let's take the last one, August 25th. When it came out on August 25th, it was only in draft form. You didn't realize that, but it was only in draft form. And since it was only in draft form, before it becomes finalized, which occurs 30 days later, before it becomes finalized, you are able to talk to the topic authors of any of the topics in that solicitation. So it is a great opportunity at the military during the first 30 days when a solicitation gets released. You can talk to the topic authors. After 30 days, they go into a blackout period. Now, unfortunately, as I said, it's a 30-day window. The last solicitation came out on August 25th, so that means on September 24th, they went into blackout. So you could not call today and talk to one of the topic authors at DOD over one of their current topics, because it's in blackout period right now. The only option you've got, remember that Q&A that we saw on the DOD search engine, you could do the Q&A and go into it realizing that your question and the agency's answer will be open and available to anyone and everyone, including your competitors. So it's a poor substitute for being able to call them and talk to them, but at least there's still something available to you. How do you talk to them? In most cases, you're going to start with an email, just because it's a way to not be interruptive and to be polite and to request some time to talk with them. I recommend you ask in that email if they would be willing to have a phone conversation with you. Reason is twofold. First of all, people will say things that they won't put in writing. At least most people will, and most people, once they've been burned by putting something in writing that came back to haunt them, they realize that they shouldn't write things down, but they can get away with saying it because they can always claim that they didn't say it, or they can claim that the hearer misunderstood, or there can be a million excuses. So that's reason number one, is you can get more rich answers by phone because people are willing to say things they're not willing to write down in an email. The second reason for switching to the phone rather than do your questions via email is, let's say I'm the topic manager at Department of Energy and I only have 10 minutes to give you. I will give you 10 minutes of my time. So do you want 10 minutes of my time with me talking at the speed I've been talking this morning? Or would you like 10 minutes of my time with me typing on my little smartphone with 2 fingers? What do you think I can do more of in 10 minutes? What way do you think I can communicate more things in 10 minutes? It's going to be via voice on the phone rather than me typing emails. So try to convert it to a call. Not all the agencies are going to be willing to do that. NSF, for example, is not going to be willing to do that. But you can always ask, see if they're willing to have a call with you. One way to get them to agree to that call is in this email, this request in your email, tell them you only want 10 or 15 minutes of their time. And that puts them on notice that you're not going to get them on the phone and not let them go. You're gonna get them on the phone, and you're gonna use their time wisely for 10 or 15 minutes, and then you're gonna sign off so that they can go back to their job. So that's one way to get them to be more willing to meet with you in a phone call is tell them you're only going to ask for 10 to 15 minutes, or you'll only require 10 to 15 minutes. How to use 10 to 15 minutes effectively? How can you gain anything in 10 to 15 minutes? You'd be amazed how much you can learn in 10 or 15 minutes if you use the time wisely. And wisely means you don't drone on for 14 minutes about your innovation and your ideas and your background and your experience and your favorite football team, and then leave them 1 minute to tell you what they think. No, you give them maybe a 2-minute overview of what you're doing, what your project is, and then you start asking questions. And when you ask a question, it's really important, ask the question and then shut up. See, if you don't shut up after you ask the question, they can't answer you unless they just butt in eventually and just go that way. But it's much more effective if you'll ask a question and then shut up, give them the opportunity to answer. Once they've answered, ask another question, shut up, give them the opportunity to answer. Again, you'll be amazed how much you can learn in a 10 or 15 minute time frame. I said there are a couple of agencies that mandate communication, pre-proposal communication. Department of Energy requires what's called a letter of intent that has to be submitted in advance of the proposal. If you don't submit a letter of intent, you cannot submit a proposal subsequent to that. Interestingly, though, you can send in a letter of intent and DOE can come back and say, this is a lousy idea, it's a stupid idea, it's a dumb idea. We sure hope you're not going to send a proposal. You can actually still send a proposal if you want to. Having sent in the letter of intent, you have a God-given right to submit the full proposal. Now, given the topic manager's attitude that this is a stupid idea, and why are you even thinking about sending this to us, does suggest a bit of a red flag that maybe you don't want to submit the proposal exactly as you were envisioning it. You may want to rethink that a bit. NSF is the other agency requiring pre-proposal communication. You have to prepare a pitch, which is basically an executive summary of your project. You submit it via the NSF website, and you get a response within 3 weeks. Some of them it's literally overnight. Sometimes it takes the full 3 weeks. And their response will be, gee, sounds great. You're invited to send a proposal. Or their response is, I don't see what's innovative about this, or I don't understand what you're trying to do here, or I don't understand the underlying innovation, and you're not invited until you clarify this. So you have to get a response to your project pitch that is an invitation. Otherwise, you cannot submit the proposal until later on. So you got to understand your agencies kind of before you call. There's many variations among the agencies. This would probably be a good place to go ahead and take our 10-minute break. I'm looking right at, we're at our end of our first hour, and this is kind of going into a different discussion here. So why don't we go ahead and take our 10-minute break. Again, I'm showing 11 o'clock high at Central Daylight Time. So let's come back at 11:10 and continue our discussion at that time. Guys, can we put up our poll again? So if anybody wants to continue to vote on which agency they want to hear the instructions for, we can, we'll know what people prefer. Or do I have to do that?
So we can relaunch it just to give people another chance to vote. Is that okay?
Okay, that'd be great. Thanks, Javier. All right, we'll see you all in about 10 minutes then.
So Jim, we're at the 10-minute mark. I'm going to stop the poll so that everyone can see the results.
All right. All right, looks like narrow victory for NSF, National Science Foundation, just one over DOD. Again, all four of these agencies, you will find annotated instructions in the PDF file that Ashley has sent you. So you do have that information. We'll just, purposes of the workshop today, the webinar, we'll cover the one from NSF. So, all right, thanks everybody for voting. Appreciate that. And thank God we didn't have a debate before we did that. That would have been a real problem. But all right, so we're about to jump into a quick section here on agency differences. And again, you need to know your agency. No two agencies are alike. That is probably an understatement these days. This gives you an idea of how much the various components of the military have varied their programs. I won't go into detail, but the point is each component, Army, Air Force, Navy, SOCOM, Office of Secretary of Defense, et cetera, has their own take on how they want to do SBIR, different sized proposals or funding limits and duration. Some have options, some don't. Some allow TABA, technical business assistance, others do not. So it's become more and more challenging to kind of follow what the military is doing. Very important point at the bottom of this slide, topics are usually not repeated at the military. So if you were to look at the current DoD solicitation and see a topic that just really has your name written on it, and you're thinking, well, you know, it'd be a rush to try to get that done by the 22nd October, I'll just wait till next time. There won't be a next time. So get in there if you see a DoD topic and do the best you can with a proposal in the current solicitation. Just showing you the complexity again the DoD has gotten into. This was done last year for one of the solicitation cycles, and it just shows how many different flavors of proposals and programs the various DoD components are doing when it comes to SBIR and STTR. One thing that's been happening in DoD, and this is completely contrary to what I told you earlier about contract versus grant agency. We talked about contract agency having a very specific topic, a very specific problem that you had to address. Well, Air Force has put up something called AFWERX, and AFWERX has violated that norm, if you will, for the contract agencies. So they have an open SBIR phase 1 topic, and open means basically you can submit pretty much any idea you want to this topic. This can be something you're already potentially selling something to a non-defense customer, and you think there might be a market for that, an interest in that product or a variation of that product. I guess it could be a service also, but a variation of that by the Air Force. And you can literally, and this is where it gets even weirder, it's not only an open topic to submit any idea you got to the Air Force, but also if you get phase 1, it's not to prove technical feasibility, it's to go knock on doors at the Air Force and see if you can find a potential customer. And if you can, then you get them to write a memo of understanding with you and apply for phase 2 and hopefully get $750,000 to kind of customize your product or service to fit the Air Force. Very, very different from any other SBIR or STTR that you would see. STTR open topic, very similar. This is a change from what they have done in the past for open STTR topics at AFWorks. It's very similar to what's described here as the open SBIR topic, but as all STTRs do, it requires a nonprofit participation. Now, interestingly, it says here you can get up to $150,000 for a phase 1 STTR open topic. They have amended that slightly down to $50,000. So Air Force and AFWorks cut that by $100,000 just recently, which I won't go there. The other open topic is a direct to phase 2 topic. What it means is basically you believe you've advanced your project so far that you already know that it's feasible, technically feasible, and you just need money for further development. That's kind of what a direct to phase 2 is. So they have an open topic for that as well. Cautions at the bottom. AFWorks, this program at the Air Force, constantly changing what it's requiring, what it's calling things, what the funding limits are. Again, they changed the STTR open topic cap by $100,000 2 days before proposals were to be accepted. I don't think I'm being too blunt by saying the solicitations are poorly written and edited. They are full of errors, inconsistencies, contradictions. And AFWorks has burned a number of bridges, both within the Air Force and within the SBIR community more generally. And it requires now, when you read one of their solicitations, you have to read it very carefully because there's an awful lot that's being written between the lines that you may not be aware of if you've not been kind of privy to the history of this bad blood between AFWorks and the rest of Air Force and the SBIR community. So you got most recently at DoD, you got the AFWorks we were just talking about. Army has put up something called the Spartan Solicitation. $200,000 phase 1, you got to do it in 4 months. So it's like drinking from a fire hose if you're a smaller startup company. You go from no revenue to having to burn up $200,000 in a matter of 4 months. Then phase 2 proposal has to be submitted in the middle of your phase 1. We can request a multi-million-dollar phase 2. Strange program, somewhat Army's attempt to be like AFWorks. And then they come down, they only have one topic. It's not an open topic. It's a self-propelled howitzer rate of fire. In other words, can you help load cannons faster than they do right now? So I don't know they're going to get many proposals from folks that have ideas for self-propelling howitzers, but we'll see. DARPA is also doing their own thing. They're basically saying we're going to put out one solicitation a year. And then we will put out what they call amendments, which actually contain their specific interests and topics. And you respond to an amendment topic, but you use the solicitation as kind of the guidance for what goes into the proposal. And then amongst the rubble, you got kind of the regular solicitations that the other components of the military are participating in. So what the heck is going on at DoD after years of being kind of stable and everybody plodding along pretty much the same? Well, there's a new mindset among some of the components. One is that they have to be smaller, quicker. They have to be moving at the speed of the adversaries and at the speed of innovation, which is faster than the old SBIR program. There's a feeling that people that had traditionally competed for DoD SBIR awards aren't good. It's not a good way of putting it, but aren't good enough will be just be the way I phrase it to be doing things in the future for Air Force, because we need stuff faster and lighter and quicker and so on. They have really burned a lot of bridges in the process. It's been a bit of a bull in the china shop, and it'd be interesting to see how that all kind of shakes out. And the other thing that's been going on at the same time, they've been kind of getting this this idea of out of cycle solicitations and doing their own thing. The DoD brought in a whole new contractor to support their SBIR program, and I'm guessing the old contractor owned the old website because the new contractor has had to stand up a new one and it has been a less than stellar implementation effort. So that has been ongoing for over a year now, and it's still pretty rough. Other agencies, NSF now is up to 24 different topics. You see the listing here in the 2 columns, and they basically say, per Glenn's quote up there, we fund almost anything that's a high quality project. And they almost thumb their nose and say, you don't have any ideas that would not fit one of our 24 topics. And I thought that was kind of arrogant, but then notice in the first row, what's that, 4 from the bottom, other. So you have 23 topics on chemical technologies, digital health, environmental, Internet of Things, and then number 24 is other. So if you don't fit in the other 23, you get stuck under other. But interesting, again, one of the newer ones has been the space topic. So you always think of NASA when you think of space travel. Now NSF wants to get into that. The same time that NSF is saying they will accept a proposal on any topic, opening their doors widely, that's the breadth. The narrowness is they only want to see projects that meet these 2 criteria. A, revolutionary, that's their term, revolutionary with very high technical risk. And 2, if it does work, there is a great commercial opportunity here. Now, some people say those are contradictory criteria. I don't agree, and I'll use the COVID-19 situation as an example. They are having to do revolutionary things in terms of coming up with a vaccine, and there's high technical risk of whether it's going to work or not. But boy, if it does, then there is great commercial potential for that vaccine. So high technical risk can sometimes go hand in hand with great commercial potential, but it doesn't always go hand in hand. Sometimes great commercial potential goes with something that's low technical risk, and sometimes something that's revolutionary doesn't have very good commercial potential. So you need to have both. You got to have both. NSF wants to see both. And I was just reviewing a proposal this morning that the applicant got rejected from NSF, and the feedback, and that's one of the main criticisms, is they don't think the market is big enough to justify NSF putting funding into it. I will warn you briefly, if you're a startup, that's good news at NSF, because at least some of their program officers, and there's a program officer over each of the 24 topics, some are saying SBIR STTR is for startups, not for mature small businesses, but for startups. Now, they don't exactly define when you become a startup, how many years you've been in business or how active your company's been, but they want to fund early stage companies. Most of their winners are first time winners. And this quote, if you're a 10-year-old company, it isn't easy to explain why you need seed capital at that stage of your history. My position per the bottom of this slide is NSF, in my opinion, is incorrectly defining seed capital as defining the stage of the company's existence or development. Whereas, in my opinion, seed funding should refer to the stage of development of the project or the innovation that you're working on. If you use my definition, then you ought to be able to qualify for NSF at any age or position of your company. So my suggestion is, if you're interested in applying to NSF, realize this bias towards startups and newbies. If you're not a startup or newbie, then you want to have a conversation pretty early with NSF about whether your program officer would entertain a proposal from you when you're not a newbie or a startup. We mentioned this project pitch and then submit the proposal after that. NIH has actually been pretty quiet of late. Now, I believe is in part because there was a major change in the SBIR STTR program at NIH, and I think there was some time spent filling that position, and that's just recently been filled. So we'll see if the new individual kind of ramps up. They've always done stuff innovatively, but has been pretty quiet here of late. Just a couple of points in the middle of the bullets there, the preliminary data, the scoop on preliminary data. First of all, what is it? Preliminary data is research that you have done, and you is the applicant or somebody on the applicant's team, consultant, subcontractor. What have you done to suggest this innovation that you're proposing might just work? What is the early evidence, and is it promising? Do you have to have preliminary data? Well, NIH does not require it. It is not required in your proposal. But NIH reviewers, at least some of them, say, if I don't see preliminary data, I don't want to consider the proposal. So to be safe, you ought to have some preliminary data in your proposal if you're submitting to NIH. Strict page limits, very limited, 7 pages for the research strategy and aim. So you get very little room for the phase 1 proposal, technical proposal. Now the overall proposal submitted through grants.gov may very well be 50 to 75 pages long, but the technical heart, which is the aims and the research strategy, is limited to 7 pages. They have something called we have a fast track program where you're able to submit a combined phase 1, phase 2 proposal. This is that first bullet. Interesting proposal because it is basically combining phase 1 and phase 2 when the phase 1 proposal should say, we don't know whether it's feasible. And the phase 2 proposal has to say, now that we know it's feasible. So you're combining those 2 proposals into one. So you got to be pretty careful how you write that. You can submit and resubmit NIH proposals time and time again. They have gone back and forth on this over the years in terms of how many resubmissions are allowed, and right now it's basically unlimited. Now, admittedly, every other time you submit the idea, you have to put a new title on it, and it becomes a quote-unquote new proposal. But then alternating times you submit it, it will be a resubmission of that new proposal. DOE have a very interesting feature in that if you will include a nonprofit, university or federal lab in your project, in your proposal, you can actually ask DOE to consider it for both SBIR and STTR funding. So it is an opportunity to get 2 chances of being funded from one proposal. They do have 2 solicitations per year at DOE, but only 1 per year in terms of an office at DOE. So each DOE office participates once per year in SBIR. They'll either be in the first solicitation or the second solicitation, but seldom will they be in both. And interest of time and the other smaller agencies there, I'll leave those to your reading enjoyment later on. Again, key point, differences among the agencies, and this just tries to contrast and compare NSF, NIH, and Department of Defense in some key areas. So how do you start to understand the differences among the agencies? Well, something that helps is make sure you read the solicitation. The agencies put those out, they expect you to read them, and if you don't read it, and you start asking questions that would be answered by the solicitation, if you had read it, it really irritates them, as you might expect. So make sure you've done your homework, read the solicitation before you submit, or excuse me, before you open a dialogue with the agency. All right, so we found a topic, we talked with the agency, we got to get registered for electronic submission. All agencies require electronic submission. And all agencies require multiple registrations. None of them has a single place that you go to and register everything. You got to register different places. For example, NIH, 6 different registrations. You got to get your employer identification number from the IRS. You got to get it done in Bradstreet number. You got to register on SAM once you got the DNB and the EIN numbers. You got to register on grants.gov. You got to register on ERA Commons. And you got to register on SBIR.gov. NSF only 5 registrations are required. DOD, where we got there, 4 registrations. And you're going, why would we have to do so many different registrations? Well, my first answer is it's the federal government. Any questions? You know, it's a bureaucracy. It's a huge bureaucracy, and so it acts in bureaucratic ways, like requiring multiple disjointed, non-connected registrations. My second answer is there are some of your competitors who are very happy with this sort of complexity, this sort of difficulty in newcomers registering for SBI or STTR. Why? Because you might look at that and say, well, the heck with that. I'm not going to submit a proposal if I have to register 5 or 6 different places. And your competitors who are already registered and are already winning SBIR STTR awards say, great, that's great. I'm glad you're discouraged. I'm glad you're not willing to submit. That gives me a greater chance of succeeding because I did register and I am submitting proposals and you can't do it. So I don't know that this will ever get any better than it is right now because there's real incentive by some folks to keep it complicated and complex. The good news I can offer in this is once you've done most of these registrations, it's a one-time deal and you don't have to continue to renew it or do a new registration. The one exception to that is the SAM registration has to be renewed annually. Get it out of the way. Just get registered, get it done now. Don't have to worry about it anymore. It doesn't get in your way while you're trying to get the proposal, technical proposal pulled together. Also helps ensure that you don't end up having some registration missing on the last day before the deadline and not be able to submit. And this is DOD, you know, they had an old submission system, they replaced it with a new submission system, and then the new submission system is being modified by the federal government-wide login.gov. Good luck. All right, so get registered. Again, one time, most of it, get it done, get it out of the way. Now we're gonna draft proposal. What goes into the proposal? Well, this is what you will typically see. There'll be a section about significance. What's the big deal? Why is this a proposal that we ought to care about? So I'm sitting there, I'm a reviewer for one of these agencies, and I have seen a dozen proposals today already, and they are about dire problems and life-threatening illnesses and things that lead to financial ruin and things that cause people to not achieve their full potential in life and leads to discrimination and slavery and child abuse and, you know, all these horrible, horrible things that they're trying to solve. And then you come along with your proposal and it says something like, you know, salmonella in chickens is a potential problem. Now, I've been sitting here reading about all these dire situations, and you come in and tell me that salmonella, it might be a problem? Well, tell you what, why don't you bring your proposal back when you know it's a real problem and you can convince me that it's worthy of being considered when I've got all these other dire proposals facing me. So don't underestimate the importance of the significance section. Don't just regurgitate what the solicitation says. In your own words, try to make a case for why this matters, why this is an important project that must be dealt with. Innovation, as I told you earlier, very important, particularly to NIH and NSF, what is different, unique about this project. Team qualifications, you gotta look on paper like you know what you're doing, that you're qualified to do the work. Aims and objectives, I think, in my opinion, aims are just NIH's terminology for objectives. And then approach, research plan, or whatever they call it, work plan, experimental plan, basically the way that you're going to go about proving feasibility in phase 1. So those are all typically found in the various agencies. What's atypical is how much they pay attention to commercialization, with NSF being the one that is most dominant on that. And I'll save that more on that when we get into the NSF instructions here. Importance of the nitpick, the instructions tell you to do certain things. They tell you to use a font size not less than 11 point. They tell you to make at least 1-inch margins. They tell you to not exceed a certain number of words, or a certain number of pages. If you're not careful in step number 1, if you violate some of those instructions, the rules police will throw you out. The rules police, my middle stepson uses that term. He's an NIH reviewer, and he says there's always the rules police who are paying very careful attention to the rules and want proposals thrown out when they don't meet all the rules. So there's an example there for DOE back in FY11. Almost 20% of their phase 1 proposals were thrown out by the rules police because they didn't meet these minimum requirements of correct font size and margin width and attachments and so on. You know, that's a horrible thing to potentially happen to someone who's submitted a proposal. So don't let that happen to you. Follow the instructions to a T. Only if you get past the rules police and this administrative or pre-screening review, only then do the technical reviewers get your proposal. If they do get it, they are looking at 2 things. One is the quality of the research, and the other is the commercialization potential. I've given you some sample criteria that might be used to judge the R&D quality. Your agency in its solicitation will specify what they use, so be sure to read those and understand how you're going to be judged. The third step down there basically is, you know, once you come out of the technical review, step number 2, there may be more proposals that the agency wants to fund than they can afford to fund. And the example shown there is DOE had 641 proposals that the reviewers said were fundable. They were good proposals, they should get funding. But DOE only had money to fund 229 of them. So your DOE, how do you get from 641 down to 229? You know, flip the coin, throw them down the stairwell, see which ones are signed left-handed. Is the staple horizontal or vertical? You know, it's the black box. We don't know exactly what goes into it. I will tell you, in my opinion, if you qualify as a woman-owned business, a minority-owned business, a veteran-owned business, a disabled veteran-owned business, you're located in a hub zone, an enterprise zone, opportunity zone, indicate that on the proposal, because that might help get you, in this example, into the 229 that actually got funded versus the 400 plus that ended up being rejected. The agencies are very sensitive that they don't want you thinking that being minority-owned business or woman-owned business, that's going to give you a preference. Let me put it this way. I understand their point, and what they're trying to say is it's a merit. Both SBIR and STTR are merit-driven programs, and you win on your merits. But if you're in a tiebreaker situation like we're describing here, and you are a well-qualified, technically, proposal, then being woman-owned, minority-owned, disabled veteran, hub zone, enterprise zone, et cetera, might just get you into the funded pot and not into the unfunded pot. So I would always recommend, if you do qualify, woman or minority-owned, disabled veteran, et cetera, indicate it on the proposal. It is, by the way, self-certification. You do not have to be an 8A certified or anything like that. It's simply you indicate that you believe you qualify based on your understanding of what qualifies as a woman or minority-owned business. This is what the rules police at Department of Energy would use. And again, you don't do all this stuff, they will throw your proposal out without further review. So make sure you follow the instructions to help get yourself through the pre-screen and help organize the proposal the way the reviewer wants to see it. Now, this is where we go into the instructions for the various agencies here. And we're going to have to bounce down. And here are the DoD ones. And this is what I mean by annotated. I've taken the instructions and I've just done balloon comments out to the right margins about things that I wanted to highlight. So you'll see this is DoD, goes on for a number of pages. Here's a comment about DoD instructions in general. And just because I know a lot of you are interested in DoD, I just want to make it clear that DoD, there are general instructions, but then there is a supplemental set of instructions at many of the components. AFWERX, for example, has a totally separate set of instructions that you're to follow, not the general DoD instructions. So make sure you're in compliance with the individual component or special solicitation instructions if you do that. NIH, again, we're skipping this because of time, but there is a new version of their SBIR instruction book called version F. And there's the URL where you can find that if you want to grab a copy of that. And this is annotated instructions for NIH. So again, if you want to look at NIH and want to see my comments about what's important and odd and highlights and so on, here are my annotations on NIH. We then come down to, and it's interesting, I didn't label the org chart here. This shows on my stack of slides as, and it's actually showing as slide number 78. That's interesting. I don't know that that's the same number in your PDF file. Mine's off of PowerPoint, so it may not be. I apologize. That's not even the right one. It ought to be, I'm showing about number 87. Slide number 87 is the one I've got. I'm just showing you kind of in org chart form what the Nsf solicitation is requesting your proposal include. Everything in blue here is a form in Nsf system called the fast lane system. And what's shown in green here would be PDF files that you are creating and attaching to those various forms in the fast lane system. Now I'm going to concentrate on what is in the dotted box there to the right of this chart. This is coming out of the current solicitation. So this is the one that had the 4 windows or cycles, and we're in the 4th cycle or window, which is the one that starts September 4th and goes to December 3rd. Translate that for you. If you submit your proposal anytime between now and December 3rd, your proposal will be evaluated, reviewed, scored, subject to award among the other proposals that were received by December 3rd. If you submit your proposal on December 4th, that's fine if you do that, but it will be held until the next solicitation cycle ends, which will be in March of 2021. So you can basically submit your proposal anytime to NSF, but if it is after the end date of any of these windows, then it rolls to the end date of the next window, if that makes any sense. All right, so there's lots of stuff here, but again, interest of time, let's keep going. A lot of this is background information. Here are the cognizant program officers that I was telling you about. There are about a dozen of them over the various topics. And for example, Henry Ahn, Dr. Ahn is shown as being over biomedical technologies, medical devices. Peter Etherton, et cetera. These folks are changing constantly. This list is not current, even though it's the current solicitation. Some of these people have rotated out, new people have come in. And I would not try to contact these people right now. You need to go through the project pitch. You need to do that first. That is the standard way of approaching National Science Foundation. And you get all these sections at the NSF instructions that say instructions, 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 and you keep going through them. They really are not instructions. And you keep bouncing along here. I'm on page 4. If you're looking at the page number of the NSF instructions down here in the bottom right. Here's more on instructions, full proposal instructions. Here on the bottom of page 5 and on page 6, these are the instructions for the project pitch. This is the executive summary that you must submit and get approved before they will allow you to submit the full proposal. So it starts back here on page 5 of the NSF instructions. It continues on page 6, continues on page 7, and I've highlighted for you here, you got 4 sections to the pitch, 500 words on technical innovation, 500 words on the general phase 1 project, 250 words on commercialization, and 250 words about your company and team members. and it's submitted via the website, NSF website, and you'll hear back from them. And that's how you contact these folks back here. That's how you get in touch with a Henry On or a Anna Bradley Estevez, excuse me, is by submitting a project pitch, and then one of these individuals will respond to you, and that becomes your program officer that you're going to communicate with from that point forward. But you really need to start with the project pitch here on page 5, get that submitted, hopefully get an invitation, and then you can start having an open dialogue with the NSF program officer. Very important here, the bottom of page 7, objectives not responsive to the solicitation. Commit these to memory. Do not propose this to NSF, any of the things shown here. Do not use the terminology used here, like evolutionary or incremental or established products. I see people make mistakes all the time. They propose things to NSF that NSF doesn't want. Proposal, I'm telling you about the one I was reviewing this morning, it talked about they wanted funding to create the second generation of their product. Well, what is the first non-responsive objective? Evolutionary development or incremental modification of established products or proven concepts. So what they were doing is proposing an incremental modification of an established product. It's almost word for word what NSF says, we don't want this stuff. So be very careful. Again, highlight these as things that you do not want to say to NSF, you do not want to propose to NSF. Here's the registrations, bottom of page 8. Here's on page 9, here are the 4 registrations. Thank goodness they at least give you a website you can go to do the registration. And finally, here, the bottom of page 9, detailed instructions tells you what needs to go into the proposal. All right, so you got your cover sheet, name, address, phone number, etc. Project summary, number 2 down there, says basically it is not an abstract. It's an abstract, guys. It's a 1-page abstract of the project to be cut into 3 boxes, shown here on page 10. Then you go to the project description, and this is the real technical heart of the NSF proposal. The project description is not to exceed 15 pages. Interestingly, they also put a minimum. They don't want to see anything less than 9 pages. You ought to be pushing the 15 pages, quite frankly. If you're down around 9, that suggests you have been too sketchy in your proposal. So what goes into these 15 pages? Well, the bottom of page 10 says the first section in this 15 pages is the elevator pitch. And you're going, elevator pitch? What do they mean elevator pitch? I mean, the only elevator pitch I've ever heard of is what you're supposed to do when you're pitching something to a venture capitalist when you get into the elevator with them. That's exactly what you're doing here, guys. It's a 1-page pitch to, in this case, NSF, they're the venture capitalists, if you will, why they ought to fund this project, why it's a great project. And it's a commercialization pitch. It's not a technical merits pitch, it's a commercialization pitch. Notice the subsections down there. Who's the customer? What's the value proposition? Tell us what the innovation is. So that's up to 1 page, is that elevator pitch. So that's 1 page of our 15. The next 2 to 4 pages of the 15-page project description will be the commercial opportunity. Again, it's commercialization. What's the broader societal need? What's the market, addressable market? What are the market drivers? How have you validated that there is an opportunity here? What are the key risks? And again, in 2 to 4 pages, you're getting into considerable detail about the commercialization opportunity here. Then the section on innovation. As I've said, NSF as well as NIH, very, very big on understanding and believing this is very innovative. So they want a thorough discussion here, 1 to 3 pages. Don't give them a paragraph that says, oh yeah, this is innovative because we said it was innovative, so therefore it's innovative. No, you got to make an argument for, I would say, first of all, define in your mind and for the reviewer to see, this is what I mean by innovative, and here's how our project meets that definition. Company or team, 1 to 3 pages. Again, tell the reviewer 2 things. Number one, how are we qualified to do the technical project, phase one technical project? And number two, how are we qualified in our company team to do the commercialization? Now, some of the roles in the commercialization phase may not be filled at this time. Again, you could describe basically what's your vision for who you're going to hire and what kind of positions you're going to hire in the future as you commercialize. And finally, in this 15-page project description, again, this goes back to this page 10, 15-page project description. You got elevator pitch, commercial opportunity, innovation, company team, and the last section is called technical discussion and R&D plan. And it's like, wow, it can't be terribly important because it's the last thing out of the 5 sections. And it's like 5-7 pages. It's the end, you know, I guess I just kind of sketchily describe what I'm going to do here. Well, no, this is actually the most important part of the project description for half of your reviewers. Half of your reviewers at NSF will be commercialization reviewers. Half of them will be technical reviewers. And the technical reviewers are focused on this section, technical discussion and R&D plan. So just because it's at the end of the project description, just because it's all kind of lumped together into one section, technical discussion, R&D plan, doesn't mean it is not a critically important section. It is very, very important. Spend ample time describing the feasibility study in phase one. Then we got references, number 4, bio sketches. Sketches in this case, not to exceed 2 pages each. And notice I've highlighted kind of the format that they want you to follow. Budget is item number 6. And the instructions go into considerable detail on the budget here. And I offer a few comments to you, but in the interest of time, I won't go through those. More on budget, even more on budget, even more on budget, even more on budget. And finally, we get down to number 8, current and pending support of the PI and senior personnel. This is where we describe what other projects, proposals we've got out there, including any that might be overlapping with this one. Number 9, indicate who else you got on the team besides the employees that you did the bio sketches for. And then kind of 10 is what are your resources, the facilities and equipment that you need to do this project. Supplementary documents, item number 11, I'll just emphasize S4, this is a little more than halfway down page 18. S4 is letters of support, strongly recommended. Do you need any more encouragement? Strongly recommended. Let me interpret, do it, include it. You ought to say required, do it. So what kind of letters? Well, look at the what I've highlighted there. Letters of support should demonstrate the company has initiated dialogue with relevant stakeholders, potential customers, strategic partners, or investors for the proposed innovation and have a legitimate business opportunity may exist should the technology prove feasible. So these letters are not letters of technical support. They're letters of commercialization support from, per the parenthetical remark there, potential customers, strategic partners, or investors. Strategic partner, by the way, I think of that as being like a licensee, someone who's going to license this. You want to have one or more of those letters attached to an NSF proposal, phase 1. If you don't, did I mention it was strongly recommended? Okay, get it. All right, and then a little bit more about human subjects, animals, etc. And that's our instructions. 20 pages basically of instructions. And I, by the way, selectively edited a fair amount of material out of that. Here are the instructions for DOE. I know a few of you are interested in DOE, so we've got those annotated here also. But that gets us down to section 5. We've drafted our proposal. Now we need to get it reviewed. Interest of time, I'll just buzz through this. This is just common errors that were made that spell checker didn't catch. This is a fairly new one that I got. Trained in advanced spitting. I thought that was a great one. It was actually about a new kind of splint for, immobilizing a bone break. But one small typo and it came out spitting instead of splinting. So they were trained in advanced spitting. And again, spell checker thought that was fine. So don't trust spell checker. Use it, but don't trust it. Also, I will guarantee you these instructions, you just saw how lengthy and kind of convoluted the NSF instructions were. DOD is even more complicated because you got the sub instructions, if you will, for the various components in addition to the master instructions. There are things you're going to miss. So I recommend getting someone to review, excuse me, review the proposal in its draft form who wasn't involved in writing it. Someone within the company, your spouse or your teenage daughter or son that's highly critical of everything you do in your life. Pretty much anybody who can read and pay attention to detail. And very important, in my opinion, you want someone who's willing to criticize. It's not afraid to criticize. And of course, that's where the spouse or teenager comes in again. But you want somebody to be critical. You don't want somebody just to pat you on the back and tell you how great you are, because trust me, the agency reviewers are not going to pat you on the back and tell you how great you are. I want you to be aware that there is a program, if you are somehow affiliated with the University of Texas system, there is an SBIR STTR support program providing assistance in the areas listed here. There's no charge for the assistance. And just to give you some idea, and this was as of last month, I believe, we'd worked with about 53 teams on 8 different campuses with not a majority, but a strong minority, 44%, saying the help they got was critical to preparing their proposal. I am the one providing this support on behalf of the University of Texas system, and I will tell you, we don't force a model on you. We don't require that you do certain things or approach the proposal in a certain way. We basically try to identify how we can best add value to your proposal writing efforts, to your team, and supplement you. We will not write the proposal. That's not part of our philosophy. And also, we want you to learn how to do this yourself. We want you to become proficient in your own SBI or STTR proposals. And if you're interested in this outreach, again, there has to be a tie to the University of Texas. You're a faculty member, you're a student, you're on staff, or the technology has some tie, some roots, and UT would be required. But feel free to let me know if you have an interest in this program. You have my contact information on the cover of this packet of materials. Submit before the deadline. Don't wait till the last minute. A friend of mine who's the deputy director for the Department of Energy's SBIR program says that 94% of the phase 1 proposals are received in the last 15 minutes before their deadline. 94% of them are received in the last 15 minutes. You're just asking for trouble if you're one of the 94%, right? Because all that hitting the pipeline at one time, it can become clogged. There are many examples of this happening. Or your internet system goes down, or you're dealing with blackouts and rolling brownouts in California or what have you. Things will go wrong. I mean, particularly if this is your first submission because you haven't done it before, you're not familiar with it. I don't trust the new DoD submission portal because it's new and its implementation was not very smooth. I certainly wouldn't hedge my bet on putting in a proposal at the last minute. SAM is also problematic, as is grants.gov, and SAM and grants.gov sometimes are inconsistent with each other and won't you allow light a submit a proposal if there's an inconsistency. Help desk, hard to reach at the last minute. So my recommendation is back 5 days from the day that it's due, start your upload. And that buys you some time to get it loaded. If you have problems, to resolve them. If you get it loaded before the 5 days, you could make other refinements and submit a revised version at the last minute if you need to. but at least you, by uploading something 5 days in advance, you got something in the system. Finally, a debriefing after the winners are announced. This is a nice feature of SBIR STTR where after the agency announces winners, the non-winners are entitled to what's called a debriefing. And this debriefing points out the strengths and weaknesses of the proposal in the eyes of the reviewers. The purpose of the debrief is to learn what to do differently next time. It's supposed to be a learning experience. But the other reason there in the middle of the page is decide, am I going to resubmit this proposal? Now, this is more likely to be allowed by the granting agencies, the NIHs, the NSFs, USDAs, et cetera, will allow resubmission. The contract agencies like the military, NASA will not. But if you're allowed to resubmit, use the debrief as a guideline. Does the debrief suggest this was a horrible idea that they laughed about for days and couldn't believe you seriously proposed it? Or did they say this is actually a very good idea, we just think there's some errors or shortcomings that need to be shored up? Obviously, the latter of those two would be a better resubmission opportunity. I finished this up with some advice from some reviewers. This is Department of Defense talking about some things that reviewers have pointed out. A friend of mine who's a fellow NSF reviewer had a nice list here. Number 2, very important, don't overpropose that phase 1. I think I mentioned that. NIH, lots of common reasons why reviewers didn't get enthusiastic about your proposal. Notice number 10, again, is there anything innovative about this? Did you sell them on it being innovative? And finally, to close out, consider looking at sample proposals. There are some on the internet, but you got to be very careful because some of them are outdated. Some of them are winning for reasons that are not the reasons that you would win. And I've listed here multiple reasons why proposals succeed. And the reason yours succeeded or succeeds may not at all be the same as the sample proposal you're looking at. I will tell you the best proposals out there, the best samples out there are found on the NIH, National Institutes of Health website, collected by the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. That's Dr. Fauci's institute. And they have a nice selection of phase 1, phase 2, and even a fast track proposal. And they're both SBIR and STTR proposals there. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Ashley and Javier. Let me stop my share of the screen here. All right. Ashley, go ahead.
Just wanted to say thank you so much.
Sure.
This was so informative, and everyone, thank you for your questions in the chat. And I know this was extremely impactful for everyone who was able to tune in today. We will be sending out the video and the slides afterwards. So please feel free to email the Innovation Center if you need anything. And of course, Jim's contact information is on that first slide. But thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Have a great week.